And my hot take is that globally, we are going through a societal collapse. And I see that people working in tech and a lot of product managers, especially people who are obsessed with AI, have an overly myopic view of what's going on in the world. And this limited view is not only causing certain problems, but it's also missing out on a lot of great opportunities.
Hello and welcome to another episode of One Night in Product Hot Takes Edition, where I speak to one person about one thing, get straight to the point, and find out what's on their mind. Now, if you've got something on your mind, why not head over to onenightinproduct.com/hot, where you can find a time, grab a slot, we can have a chat, we can get your opinions shared with the world. But even if you don't have any opinions, make sure to head over to onenightinproduct.com anyway, where you can find all of my past podcast episodes with thought leaders and practitioners, as well as links to the podcast and all of the best podcast platforms, as well as YouTube, where you can like, share, subscribe, and all of the cool stuff you do over there. Anyway, enough of me. Let's get straight to Sam Greenwood's hot take. All right, so in front of me, I see a kind of a wood-panelled, two different types of wood from the looks of it as well, or maybe it's a corner with a little curtain, a picture, and a smiling person in front of me with some AirPods in, just like me. So I'm going to stop waffling and throw straight over to you and ask you what your name is, where you're based, what it is you do, and most importantly, what's your hot take?
All right. Thanks, Jason. So I'm Sam Greenwood, and I'm based outside Montreal in Canada. And I'm a coach, actually. I work with product managers and help them build emotional resilience and leadership skills. And my hot take is that globally, we are going through a societal collapse. And I see that people working in tech and a lot of product managers, especially people who are obsessed with AI, have an overly myopic view of what's going on in the world. And this limited view is not only causing certain problems, but it's also missing out on a lot of great opportunities about where we're going in the future and what's next. What's next for humans?
I'm going to say that if your goal is to build emotional resilience in product managers, then that's a hell of a way to do it. That's a slightly, maybe a dystopian future coming up and we're all going to get turned into glue. Is that how you work on the emotional resilience, or are you trying to sort of toughen people up a little bit?
No. I just think PMs are, they're really well positioned for, someone who can benefit from building their emotional resilience, both due to the stress of the role, but, also the need for emotional intelligence and leadership skills. So.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that societal collapsing. So, there's a lot of, these days at least, there's a lot of people talking, or not, there's some, not all, there's kind of, you've got two extreme camps of the AI debate, for example, where you've got some people saying AI is going to change everything again and it's the future of everything. And then you've got other people on the other side basically saying that these machines are going to become sentient and, overthrow us like in the Matrix. Where are you on that scale, or are you not even talking about AI at all? What is it that you mean by societal collapse?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at other patterns as well. I think AI is definitely in the mix, but you also have climate change. There's also, political things going on. Obviously, most people are quite aware of what's happening between the US and Canada, and tariffs and kind of political, economic warfare. There's lots of social unrest and political instability around the world, different wars. Some of this stuff is going on all the time, but I think more and more we're both aware of it and, in theory, I would say, I haven't looked at the exact statistics, but I would say it's definitely increasing. And also our anxiety around it is pretty strong these days.
I was just looking behind me because I've got a book somewhere about, I think it's called Utopia for Realists or something like that. And kind of, if I remember rightly, and I might very well not remember rightly, but it kind of talks about the fact that, notwithstanding some of the issues that you've just kind of come up with, that actually, for the most part, things in this kind of the human world today are kind of almost like the best they've ever been. Now, again, they may not stay that way, but you kind of talked a little bit and you touched on it just a little bit then, this idea that, some of this stuff does kind of go on almost like normally. and like some of it is the kind of the usual circular machinations of different types of political systems colliding and such like that. So there is that kind of possible counter of like, well, actually things have been pretty darn good for a number of years, sort of post World War II, and all the things that have been going on, the scientific and societal advances that we've made, and that maybe this is just almost like a reversion back to the norm, almost, or the mean, like that we've
Yeah.
almost kind of had it too good. Like, do you subscribe to that at all, or do you think that there's something more
Yeah.
fundamental going on?
Yeah, no, I think that I think that's definitely on point. And one pattern that I'm pretty obsessed with paying attention to is this idea around growth. And especially in the tech world, and yeah, everyone wants it to go up and to the right.
Yeah, number
And
go up, number go up.
if you look at say plants, which are living, they're living things. They're actually a system that we can compare to. They grow and then they collapse, die, decompose, turn back into soil, and then the next year their seeds get reborn. So that's actually a more realistic pattern of growth. It's like the four seasons rather than just up and to the right always. And so societally, economically, on a global scale, we haven't necessarily had that kind of fall and winter season in a while, I would say. And yeah.
So, notwithstanding the obvious effects on the people that are around today, and the impact that any of these things going wrong are going to have on the specific people that are around today, on an overall system level, like you just talked about systems, do you think, and I know this is going to be maybe an awkward question, but do you think it's almost to the benefit of either the planet or humanity that there's some kind of correction, or do you think that the net effect will be detrimental?
The net, that's interesting. I would say, I mean, was it a good thing that the dinosaurs went extinct?
Well, it was good for us.
It was good for
Not
us.
not so good for the dinosaurs, obviously, but
Yeah,
again, I guess that's the point, right? Like, yes, that really sucked for them and all of the creatures. I've watched enough nature shows with my son to kind of dig deep into some of the sort of the after effects of that. But like on a kind of sort of certainly on a human scale, but on a systemic scale, it kind of did enable other things to happen.
right. And I'll just add a point too, which is that there are some dinosaurs that still exist,
Or
types
birds.
of birds and maybe the crocodile, or, certain animals they still exist. So it's not to say that humans are going to become extinct or that we should or whatever, but, maybe some types of humans are going to still exist in the long future.
Yeah, and again, without wishing to pick on individual humans, there is this kind of potential concept that well, certainly, for example, you could argue, I'm not going to make a particularly strong, well-argued argument about it, but the idea that, in the grand scheme of things for the global ecosystem, that, humans having to, rebuild or something would actually be a good thing because it would actually give the rest of the planet a chance to breathe. But obviously,
Yeah.
again, that doesn't really help us. So I guess if we think about, well, there's kind of two ways to move forward. Like, if we assume that your hypothesis is true, that this is going to happen in some way,
Yeah.
it either means that we have to try to prevent it, or it means that we need to try and work out a way to live with it. Or, well, I guess the third way is that we just have to give up and, start looting. So what do you think? What do you think the most likely one of those responses? Because from my experience, watching all of these politicians flouncing around and doing the things that they do, they kind of
Yeah.
just seem to stick their fingers in their ears. They stick to really short-term thinking, and they don't bother trying to fix the big things at all. So what do you think should happen and is likely to be able to happen?
Yeah. Well, I think what should happen is probably what happened in the other iterations of history where this happened. And looking at the different empires that have collapsed in the past throughout history, and what happened afterwards, and the political kind of greediness and just resource grabbing and everything, that's pretty common. And the politicians will also they'll take advantage of the trust of the empire, the citizens, etc. And they'll basically debase it. They'll use it to their advantage, to maintain their power and their wealth, but then they'll break that trust until it just fragments. So just to go back to your 3 points, I think all three of those are going to happen, just on different places and different scales. So I would say that, the the nation state is an interesting place to look, because that's actually a concept that didn't always exist, and it won't always exist. So is that something, is that going to break down? What could replace it? What are other ways of organizing our societies, building, like having resource sharing and decision making structures together? So yeah, and I think there's definitely all three of those are happening right now, and that's kind of where I'm coming from, because I was definitely just covering my eyes and plugging my ears for a long time, and there's some a lot of kind of fear and emotional disturbance around looking into it. But for me, it just started where I was interested in, like, eating healthier, having healthier food for myself, so I could perform better, actually. And then I started being curious about, like, the food system, and where was the food coming from and how is it made. And I think that a lot of people are aware of those kind of things. But then, does it actually inform the work that we do and how we show up at work and what products and projects we're willing to invest our life into? And so that's where things changed for me, because I actually started out as an engineer. And then I
Yeah.
was like, wait a second, like, I'm on the Titanic right now. And, like, I'm building better chairs, but, like, I'm on the Titanic, you know? And so I wanted to, like, get out in the water and work on the boats, and uh, see what kind of boats people were using. So metaphorically, at least. So I got interested in sustainability and like food system change and that kind of stuff. And so I met lots of people that are doing this. They're just looking at it and they're saying, okay, this is happening, and what can we do about it? And then some people, they turn back and they start yelling at everyone else and saying, hey, why are you doing that? You're you're fucking this up, and you're causing the problems. And that's another approach too.
But you talked about the myopia
Yeah.
of product people and of tech people, maybe people that ideally might be in a position to try and do something to fix some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you touched a little bit already on sort of short-term thinking, but I guess the simple question is, like, well, I guess two questions. What could these people be doing instead? I mean, you touched on it a bit, but maybe to expand on that a little bit. But also, how might we motivate them to do some of that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna address the first one or the second one first, the motivation. I just think the first thing to be more motivated is to just notice, like, if for anyone listening, like, just notice if you're in a state of fear, and just acknowledging that, like, because you're not going to be able to do anything if you're caught in that fear. It's like, oh, I need to just focus on my job, or I can't think big picture right now. I mean, anyone who's a PM knows what that's like. You can't get into the strategy when you're just totally, you know, drowning in the execution mode. So, but just taking that to another scale. So noticing if you're in fear, um, and then just being with that. Really, I think that's a little bit of my, emotional resilience thing here, is just being with those emotions and not trying to fight them necessarily. That's really the first gateway to, like, seeing what's going on. And then once we start to see what's going on, then we get that, problem solving energy coming up. So again, the product manager really knows this, where once you can look at the problem, once you can talk to the customer, you can look at the market system or whatever's going on, you start to understand what's happening, and then the problems, the solutions, solutions just come flying in, and got tons of ideas, and that's a huge opportunity too for anyone who wants to go in this direction of building products and services and communities too. I think it's whether it's online or in person, there's just a huge need for like solutions, but also connection and support and things like that. So yeah,
Well,
that would
that
be
support thing is interesting, though. Sorry, just
yeah,
to say, but that support thing is interesting, though, because there's this, again, if we think of our sort of different paths forward, like that could be us all kind of huddling together on the Titanic, as kind of touched on before, or it could be support to solve the problem. And then, of course,
right.
that does at least suppose that the problem itself is actually solvable. And even if you ignore, you know, moonshots or Mars shots from people like Elon Musk, like there's to some extent you should probably try anyway. But like if it's literally an unsolvable problem, then
Yeah.
your support is really just you making each other feel better on the way out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the plant analogy is great again, because, like a plant that comes to the end of the season, should we try to prop it up and keep it there and, put some sticks on it and paint the leaves green so it looks beautiful? Like, is that really worth it? Or should we support it as it collapses and put it into the compost pile and let it decompose and turn into really great soil and harvest the seeds? So same thing with a product. Like, should we hold on to that product and just like, you know, follow this pattern of enshittification and just try to keep extracting more and more of the base value from it, the trust in the customers or whatever. Like, should we do that, or should we sunset it? Should we just say, okay, it's time. This is done, and put it in the compost pile, you know, liquidate the resources, liquidate the people, but take the seeds too, take the learnings. And so that's on a societal scale. I think, you know, it's inevitable, in my opinion, I guess I would say, in just the research that I've done and the people that I've talked to and looking at historical patterns, societies come and go. Like, it's a natural thing. And we can hide from it, but it doesn't mean it's going to stop.
Kind of reminds me of maybe a tiresome LinkedIn meme, like, 10 things that the collapse of the Persian Empire taught me about B2B SaaS or something like that. But I guess,
Exactly.
though, that's the ultimate point, right? I mean, obviously, there are always analogies to be drawn, growth
Yeah.
curves, and you could probably get a Kodak reference in there or something like that as well.
Yeah.
But I guess the simple question is, I mean, again, you talked a little bit about people supporting each other. You talked about people trying to understand where they are kind of mentally, like their level of fear, all of those things. And these are,
Yeah.
from a resilience perspective, sensible things to do. But from maybe from a practical product perspective,
Yeah.
depending on the types of things that people are working on, I mean, maybe some products have more of a chance of making an impact versus not. What do you think people should be working on now, apart from themselves?
I love this. This is exactly where I want to end up, because I think this is the most interesting part. And so there's a couple of patterns and trends that I'm noticing. And I think this is what I was really hoping to point out by jumping on the hot takes today. So one thing that I think everyone will relate to this is the importance of having a narrow focus, like a narrow ICP, because essentially both like the tech world is very saturated, but people are on the one hand, we're very connected, but we're also starting to fragment in certain ways, whether it's polarization on social media, whether it's, tariffs going up and creating more friction for like global supply chains, things like that. As the system collapses, there's going to be more and more fragmentation. So a great example too is, like, think of COVID and what things became more localized, or just, smaller groups of people that were interacting with each other. And so the ability to identify like a narrow ICP, a narrow market segment, and really build something for that group of people, that's going to be like, that's where there's going to be huge opportunities. So like if your market is the entire internet, good luck. But if you have a specific group of people and you understand them well, obviously, then you can very likely solve their problems, help them create more value through their work. And you're going to be obviously bolstered by things like AI's ability to build tools and things like that. So it's actually a great time for I think PMs especially to get more into the solopreneur, or working in very small teams and moving really fast. This is the other thing. Like, I think PMs just have such a great skill set for kind of the whole business process, from obviously design and building, but also understanding the customer and understanding the business side of things. Not every PM is as well versed in, say, business and marketing, but I think those will come with the game. And then just to kind of continue on this more, I think the other thing that's going to be really valuable is the ability to like build trust. I think that's something, especially through internet and social media, that is becoming more and more difficult. So it may not be like that building the solution is the most important aspect of the PM role, but more understanding the customer and the market, and building really high quality trust in that space, so that when they do bring a solution to the table, it's adopted quickly. And yeah, I would say that's a good summary there.
Well, the clock is ticking, so they better get started soon. But if they want to come and find you after this to chat about some of these thought-provoking topics that you've raised up, then where can they come and do that before the time runs out?
Awesome. So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Sam Greenwood, and you can type in Sam Greenwood or emotional resilience for product managers. And also just mention there's lots of other great thought leaders on these topics, like Nora Bateson, Jem Bendell, Donella Meadows, just to name a few. So systems thinking or societal collapse, those are interesting search topics.
Yeah, no, I can already see what I'm going to be doing this evening. Well, I'm going to go and read about that sort of stuff. Hopefully some of the listeners will too, but all I can do for now is thank you for your hot take.
All right. Thanks, Jason.